Is long-term care insurance really worth it? You've seen the policies, at least as an advisor, that were around 20, 30 years ago that don't exist today.
Yeah, 70% of people over 65 will probably need some form of long-term care before they pass away. If you never use it, your money's coming back to you
your premiums
or your
back.
kids,
Yeah.
right? Your beneficiaries will receive it by way of a life insurance benefit.
There are solutions today that make more sense that did not exist 5, 6, 7 years ago. I'm really excited for the conversation today. I've got a really good friend of mine, Russell Boring. He's the founder of Elevated Strategies Insurance Services. It's a long name.
There we go.
At the end of the day, Russell, you spend a lot of time dealing with insurance problems or solutions for clients, the high net worth, long-term care. Mm-hmm. But we were having a conversation on, is long-term care insurance really worth it?
Yeah.
And the main reason why I bring that up is because you've seen the policies, at least as an advisor, that were around 20, 30 years ago that don't exist today.
Yeah.
And in fact, the payouts of what they're paying out for long-term care insurance, they were attractive back then. And now this world of inflation, you're like, well, that's not quite enough.
Yeah.
And then the world of long-term care has changed dramatically, as well as the solutions that are out today. Mm-hmm. And we run into this kind of question answer with clients. It's like, do you have enough to where you can self-insure? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. And then at what age is it appropriate to kind of look at long-term care insurance? So we're going to kind of dive into the details of all of that and hear your perspective. This is not a sales pitch. It's just education only. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the long-term care insurance market, where things are at today and how things have changed.
Yeah. So, historically, if you go back 10, 20 plus years, there were a number of carriers throughout the country that all had this traditional form of long-term care. And think of traditional long-term care as like your car insurance, right? You pay premiums, you hope you never file a claim. The premiums go up and down based on claims data, and there's no real ancillary benefit if you never do file the claim. So it's just money out of pocket, right? Yeah. And over the years, what you found is these insurance carriers really grossly mispriced their products of what their actuarial data said the claim data should look like. Yeah. And for that reason, you've seen a lot of carriers move out of the traditional long-term care space. In California today, there's like less than 5, maybe less than 3. So, a very small amount. When there's less carriers, there's less competition to drive prices down, all of that. You're also seeing a lot of clients that bought those policies 10, 20 years ago. Some of them made out like with a great policy where maybe it has a lifetime benefit pool or crazy inflation that the insurance carriers are trying to buy them out of today, right?
Yeah, I saw a Genworth policy recently. Yeah. I was like, that one's pretty good.
Yeah, like they made some guarantees or some arrangements before where they regret it. The insurance carriers do. So for those clients, the majority of the time, you're like, look, even if you see a rate increase, the majority of the time it still makes sense to keep. However, the insurance carrier and product market has changed a lot since then. And I can go into the details of what those look like today, unless there's...
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing what those look like today, because historically, as an advisor, if you haven't looked at long-term care insurance by the time you're age 65, it was like, wow, this is a little too expensive. Yeah. Maybe it doesn't make sense if you can self-fund. Yeah. But the market looks very, very different. And also the numbers and the stats around how many people might actually need something like this.
Yeah. So, the numbers are obviously part of it, where 70% of people over 65 will probably need some form of long-term care before they pass away. About 1 in 3 of those people may not need long-term care, but 1 in 5 of those people may need long-term care for more than 5 years. So, if you have a long-term care claim that's costing 6 figures a year and that lasts for 5 years, that's a real risk to people's retirement plans, right?
And then it's a big frustration if you're one of those 1 in 3 people that didn't need it, and you paid a lot of money for something, and you just feel like that's money gone when you're thinking about what could this money do for me, for my kids, for the charities, the organizations that I want to leave it to.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the reason, too, why some of these products have evolved over the years for that exact argument, right? You don't want to pay into something that you never you might never see a return of, right? So now I would say that there's 4 primary product structures out there. You still have the traditional, which is the old school version. Premiums go up and down. It might be inexpensive compared to the other alternatives. However, you don't control what the future looks like, and it's a premium you pay for the rest of your life. And you may not ever need it, so there may not ever be any payback, right? The more popular products now are these type of hybrid structures, right? So you can have it on a life insurance chassis where it's really like a life insurance policy, as you would know it. Say it's $1 million death benefit, but you include a rider that can accelerate that death benefit pool up to a percentage of the death benefit for tax-free long-term care. A lot of people like that because it kills 2 birds with 1 stone, but not everybody needs, $1 million of life insurance. If they're in the say $2 to $10 million range, and they've got more than enough assets to leave to their kids, but they don't have an estate tax issue for life insurance purposes, they may not want to pay for a life insurance policy that's $1 million or $2 million and just include that rider. So some of the other options are these more long-term care leveraged plays that are still on a life insurance chassis, but the life insurance use is more of a return of premium. So let's say you put in $100,000 into one of these policies over the course of either a single pay or 10 years, your death benefit's going to be somewhere in the $100,000 to $150,000 range. So at least if you never use it, your money's coming back to you or your kids, right? Your beneficiaries will receive it by way of a life insurance benefit. So if there's any growth, it's still income tax free for them. However, the more important aspect here is the long-term care piece. And the long-term care on the same $100,000 commitment we're looking at, day one has $300,000. So you leveraged it up, and that's what the long-term care conversation is about these days, is using these dollars to leverage up for long-term care, and it'll still grow with inflation, and then you can tap into it, and those distributions for that long-term care are still income tax-free. There's one other option too that's gaining a lot of popularity these days, and that's on an annuity-based structure. So the annuity-based structure is really nice because you don't lose all of your like the investment opportunity of, a lot of the times we look at these conversations as, if we self-insure and we go invest these dollars elsewhere, you can create really attractive outcomes, right? Especially when you compare it long-term to any insurance product. However, it is still nice when you're looking at somebody and they have a portfolio of assets that are safe, moderate, high risk. We're looking at using their safe bucket assets,
You're looking
right?
at exchanging safe money.
Yeah.
So something that's in money markets or something low
Exactly.
yielding as a replacement for this type of product or solution that provides a long-term care benefit.
Correct.
And a similar type return.
Yeah. So if somebody's got a few $100,000 or $1 million or more dollars in that safe bucket, well, we can peel off a little bit of that, and you still get that 2 to 3 times leverage on the long-term care pool day one, but your actual contribution amount is still growing at 3 to 5, 6% in some states at a really nice, comfortable rate of return without a whole lot of market risk, right? So if they ever needed that money, they didn't lose that an investment capability of the money. Now, granted, we're not talking 8 to 10% returns here. This is a safe asset. The 8 to 10% returns are on the long-term care pool. And the most attractive side of those things are if somebody's got an existing annuity or an existing life insurance with cash value in it that they don't really need for retirement income or anything, and they're in a gain position, that's where this gets really attractive because you're taking an account value in a gain position and creating a tax-free position for long-term care that's leveraged up. So that's where we start to look at.
So in that example, I've got a couple of examples, but that example, I'm 74 years old.
Yep.
I've got this life insurance policy that I've been paying into, but I've made some good decisions and gotten lucky, and so now my net worth is higher, and I don't really need that life insurance policy.
Yeah.
I can look if there's any cash value in that. I can look to do an exchange for a long-term care type policy. And I at least go to sleep at night knowing if I didn't use it for long-term care, I'm still getting those dollars back.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, a lot of folks, they buy life insurance, a decade ago or more, and it's grown. And then today their life circumstance have changed. You know, either their kids are independently wealthy or their kids are in a different position than they were now. Their relationship has changed. They may look at that life insurance policy and say, look, we've got enough assets. We don't need that. But the long-term care risk is real when I look at my financial plan. Yeah. Now there's a way to potentially fund and protect that risk with an asset other than, you know, their managed accounts, that sort of thing too.
So in that long-term care piece, like let's say it's a couple $100,000 that goes into a policy, and I get, call it $500,000 or $600,000 that's available for long-term care. If I don't use it, I'm going to get that $200,000 back plus a little bit of growth.
Yeah, plus the.
But let's just say I've got $500,000 to $600,000 available for long-term care. How much can I use per month or in total?
Yeah.
I mean, that $500,000-$600,000, but how much do I have access to potentially each month?
Yeah, I mean, so it's dependent on, number one, carrier product specifics. It's also state specific. So some states have different regulations than other states, and it's difficult to say, hey, high level here. But on some of these annuity structures, think of it as, you know, if you put in $250,000 or $300,000, your monthly maximum on most of these is somewhere around $10,000 day one. So it is a larger contribution amount. But again, it can make a lot of sense if we're just trying to protect a risk that could be a big risk to the retirement plan.
One of the things that I've seen as I've been in this business as an advisor for 17 years now, obviously there's a lot of clients over the years that they could easily self-fund. And so I didn't have any issue with them not having long-term care. But then, life happens. Yeah. And what I've seen, at least in a personal situation, but also with some clients, is that they have enough money to pay for long-term care if their spouse or partner needed help. Yeah. But they don't spend the money. Yeah. And so to me, having a long-term care policy at least kind of protects you from being able to use those dollars. So that way you're not stuck being the caregiver and going to all the doctor's appointments. You're still there for your spouse and you're part of it and trying to do the best that you can to get through it. But it's not all falling on your shoulders, and you could have a little bit better peace of mind, potentially. I've just seen that happen in a couple of cases.
Yeah. And a lot of the times today, these policies, because it's becoming so much more popular, a lot of these carriers have these concierge teams to help coordinate the care. So, they may have a third-party professional group that's a concierge team that they partner with. So when you file a claim, they're actually assisting, the healthy spouse in this case, with how to manage the documents, with how to manage the claim process. And I think that's another nice support that's a feature within some of these products.
Because we all love dealing with medical bills and all of that.
Look, they're still insurance companies at the end of the day, so they can be a pain in the butt sometimes, but the hope is, we're protecting a risk, right? So,
when does long-term care insurance not make sense?
It becomes more of a want-need conversation as people make more money. I do think that it's sort of like the back end and the front end, right? The people that are struggling to get by and pay for their mortgages and stuff in retirement, it's really hard to have a conversation and say, hey, we want to take money from all of your actual needs.
That's helping pay for your life.
Yeah, to fund it. Because on the low income side, there are protection mechanisms in place like Medicaid and stuff that, hypothetically, if you draw down all your assets, you're still protected. You just have a lot less flexibility in those plans. And then on the flip side, the people that are ultra wealthy, you could argue, hey, this is more of a want than a need because they could self-insure. I still believe, now granted, I have the conflict of interest here. It's the products that I'm selling. But at the end of the day, I still think that there's a very sincere math conversation for those types of clients, especially on the annuity-based structures, where if we're looking at somebody that's got, say, 30, 40, $50 million, or at least a net worth in that size, they've usually got a decent asset pool of the safe, moderate, risky portfolio. And now we can have a real conversation of, hey, how do we take some of your safe bucket, and does it make math sense, right? To potentially move some of this and leverage it up 3 times? compared to keeping cash on hand or a money market account.
Well, sometimes, ultra high net worth individuals, they have a lot of money and assets. They don't have a lot of liquidity, though. Right?
And that happens.
So you have to pay attention to
Yes.
liquidity. But what I think was most interesting in terms of having conversations with you and learning from you about what's changed in the market is that it's not always dependent on age today, like it used to be.
Yeah.
And so if you've got $2 to $15 million, and even if you're in your 70s and long-term care is one of those things that's on your mind to protect against, there are solutions today that make more sense that did not exist 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Correct. Yeah. And just think about it, because if I go back to the product options that we discussed before, a lot of them are tied to a life insurance chassis. Those are going to be less attractive the older you get, right? Life insurance gets more risky, and there's multiple risks that the carrier is trying to cover for life or long-term care. When you go into those higher ages, the annuity option starts to make more sense because there's less risk on the table for the insurance carrier. They're creating a rider, but they're also, their net amount of risk is significantly lower because they're the ones owning the managing the assets at that point, right? So they're offering an incentive to bring assets to the carrier. And now it's more of a leverage play for the long-term care piece at those older ages, where the things that would otherwise disqualify you for life insurance or make it really expensive, a lot of those things are removed from the risk category here. And now you can still get attractive leverage even into the 70s. So.
Got it. And you also mentioned that California has a different amount of leverage that can be put on for long-term care versus other states. There are some states where instead of 2 times your benefit, you can get significantly more.
Yeah, and it's the multipliers may not be so different. It may be 2 or 3 times depending on how your underwriting is, and it's usually a couple page questionnaire, and depending on age, maybe a telephone interview. But for some California specific client or products, they may not have that monthly maximum increase with the inflation or with that crediting rate. Where other states, you would see that crediting rate grow, the monthly maximum grow with the crediting rate. So if you're earning 4, 5, 6% on that annuity, it's really nice to have that long-term care pool that's already leveraged up, growing at that 4, 5, 6 amount.
Got it.
For that monthly maximum.
So in California, if you had a product that had a life insurance or a long-term care insurance component to it, and your monthly maximum was $10,000, that's pretty much going to stay there in California for the most part.
For certain products, yes.
For certain products.
Yeah, there's other products that do increase, and it's just dependent on what the client's overall fact pattern looks like to know which product is going to make the most sense for them. But yeah, that's some of the restrictions you run into with California.
But if you're outside of California, that $10,000 monthly out-of-pocket maximum could increase over time to help with the cost of inflation and all of this stuff.
And it's really just that monthly maximum piece. So even in California, that long-term care pool still grows at that 4, 5, 6%. But it's just your monthly maximum that you can tap into that pool may be fixed on certain annuity products.
Got it. Well, Russell, I enjoyed the conversation today. I feel like I always learn from you and our other partners that are in insurance. I think the real takeaway here is trying to understand whether or not somebody needs or wants long-term care as a part of their plan. First, you need to sort of self-assess. Can I afford to self-fund this, or do I need some sort of protection in place? Do I have the right amount of assets, and kind of have a conversation with you about, age and opportunities that are there, but also then reevaluate how much money do I have in safe versus moderate versus risky, or even an old cash value life insurance policy that could be repositioned. At the end of the day, the landscape for long-term care insurance has changed, and that's the main reason why I wanted to have the conversation with you. These new options sort of changed my thinking in terms of, hey, you're 70 years old, never looked at long-term care. It's actually not too late. It's worth a discussion now.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, my job is to partner with advisors well, right? So if I can bring in the information to allow the client's team to assess, does this make sense or not? I'm doing my job. So if I can equip you guys to have a thoughtful conversation about this and consider, how does this option look compared to this option? That's me doing my job. So that's my whole goal with this, is how do I partner well with the fiduciary team members and come up with a solution that is in the best interest of clients. So,
well, thank you so much, Russell.
Yeah, thank you.